Hey everyone, it is late at night and I am Norman. I'm always intrigued at what watches might be in someone else's collection. Tonight we're going to be looking at the watches that are in various hip-hop stars' watch collections. And I have quite a few of them here, so I'm going to be glancing down at this thing because there's so many. This is going to be a long video, kind of like a podcast in video form. So if you don't want to watch it, you can always just listen to it, and I'll most likely post it as a podcast over on Anchor, so it would show up on Spotify and whatnot. So I went out and I pulled up an article on Ranker, and it was the best hip-hop artists of 2023 or something along those lines. And I went through and started picking some random artists that are on that list. I tried to stay away from ones that are just absolutely everywhere. So I didn't go with Drake or someone like that. I chose people that are lesser known. Some of them I've heard of, others I haven't. Most of them, I haven't actually heard their music. I love hip-hop. During the weekend when I'm taking a break from grinding and working on YouTube videos all week, I sit down and make instrumental, lo-fi, lounge music hip-hop. So there's a special place in my heart for hip-hop. And in fact, I actually started making that music after I started this channel because my original vision for the channel was that I would do a lot of B-roll stuff, get really good at that, and I wanted music to play during those clips. And there isn't a ton of music that's on YouTube's free music library. So I decided to start making some music for that, and I realized that it's actually cathartic to make this genre of music. It was easy, it wasn't a cage match like other genres of music that I've done in the past where it's just me battling a song all night and me usually losing and the song sounding nothing like I had hoped. But with this stuff, it just kind of comes out of me, and so I'm able to use it in like intros and my vlog videos. So since you're watching this video, you've heard at least one of my songs in the intro. So I do love me some hip hop, but I haven't heard a whole lot of contemporary hip hop because I just haven't been in a mood for it. So when I'm in a certain mood, that's when I'll go out and dig into music. So right now I would like to fill up my crooner playlist a lot more than it is. So I'm going to be going online, tracking down different artists and songs, and I'll probably encounter a lot that I have never heard of before. And so when I am in the mood for contemporary hip-hop, as opposed to my collection of 90s and 2000s, when I think hip-hop kind of peaked, I feel like that was the prime. The technical prowess of all the artists was just on point. You have the early guys who were doing it kind of coming into their prime, the big heavies like Ice Cube, just putting out bangers of hip-hop songs in the 90s and 2000s. So if I am in a contemporary hip-hop mood, then I'll be tracking down some of these newer guys. I think the closest thing that I can think of to contemporary hip-hop that I've really gotten into isn't really hip-hop, and that would be The Weeknd, who is actually my absolute favorite artist right now. But he's more synth-wavy R&B stuff. I mean, when he was first coming up, I think he kind of fit in with the genre of contemporary hip-hop guys, even though he was more R&B. But now he's really set himself apart as his own thing. So we're going to go through these hip-hop guys that I've tracked down, these rappers, I think is what the article was called, and that cracks me up, the term rap. I've always preferred hip-hop. It just sounds cooler to me for some reason, and I feel like I may have a bias against describing people with words that end in ER. Like when you hear people say rocker or punk rocker, it's so weird. Why not just call them rock stars and punks? I don't know. I'm biased that way. I would prefer to just call these people hip-hop stars, but the article referred to them as rappers. So the first one that I have on my list is Travis Scott. And I've definitely heard the name. I've probably encountered his music, but I don't recall his songs off the top of my head. So what kind of watches are in his collection? He has a Royal Oak collaboration, which is a great looking brown colored, skeletonized Royal Oak. I'm not a huge fan of the dial, but the brown color is intriguing. And it looks pretty great with the strap. It's skeletonized at the 6 o'clock. There's a moon phase down there. It's so busy, I can't even make out the other dials on there. But since if you're watching this on video, you'll be able to see them because I'll zoom in nice and close. And this particular watch was mentioned in a Hodinkee article. Let's see, next from Time and Tide Watches, they listed a bunch of the watches that he has. And the next one is a Richard Mille 0703 Marshmallow. And yeah, I'm not at all a Richard Mille fan. They're just... And most of the watches that we encounter in this list are going to be gaudy and huge because ever since way back in the day, hip-hop has a tradition of people making it in the business and celebrating the fact that they've risen up out of the poverty of the streets and they've been successful. And in celebrating that, they'll purchase huge gaudy jewelry and wear that as a sign to others that they've made it. And I would imagine for themselves, it's a huge boon to look down and see this and be able to tell yourself, man, I've succeeded. I've done it. I've pulled myself out of whatever rough situation I started in, and I am now a rock star. So these watches in this list are probably all going to be very gaudy and showy, and that's kind of the thing. But this first Richard Mille, the cool thing about it is it's fun and whimsical. I mean, just look at that crown. It almost looks like a cupcake or something. And the colors and shapes of it are very candy-like, hence the name Marshmallow. They do look pretty marshmallowy. So I feel if someone is going to go for an RM, why not something fun like this one? So other than the price tag, it doesn't look like a big showy piece. It's like some bizarre thing out of Alice in Wonderland or something. Let's see, the next watch that's listed in this article going through his collection is an AP Royal Oak double balance wheel Openworked chronograph. So we have a black case on it with a black bracelet. Everything's black. We have gold hands and some gold highlights in the movement that you can see through the dial. It's very busy because it's all skeletonized. The PVD coating looks great, but black and gold like this I find just looks a little odd. I feel like a cream color definitely is more complementary to gold than black is, but that's just me. The next one is a Patek Philippe World Time, reference 5131G. Oh, there goes the F91-001. And this is a nice dressy piece. I actually like Patek Philippe. I don't think they have any watches that if money was no object, I would buy and wear because even though they're dressy and kind of classy, I think a lot of their pieces are really big. I don't recall the size of this particular one, but I think it is over 40 millimeters. But it's a fun piece. There's a lot going on the dial. It's a world time and it has a map of the world in the center of it. So you get a pop of color in there. and you have the different time zones around the edge of the dial. It's dressy, and it's not terribly flashy like we see with other pieces. It's a little bit more subdued, a more traditional looking watch, if you will. I like this one. The hands are pretty cool. The hours hand is an open circle there, so you can kind of see what's underneath it on the map. That's kind of cool. And the hour, or the minute hand, is a Dauphine hand. Just a great looking piece. And the next one that we have is another Richard Mille. As this list goes on, I'm going to start omitting some of these, at least in pictures. I'll point out the reference, but we don't need to dwell on them because some of them are pretty commonplace. As far as wealth watches go, they're pedestrian. They're Richard Milles or blinged out Rolexes. But this next one is interesting because it's the Richard Mille RM69. Yeah. And it's the Erotic Tourbillon. And so at the top of the dial, the whole top half of the dial, is a 3-line display of erotic phrases that I don't know what kind of interval they rotate on or anything like that. In the future, I might do a deeper dive into this watch because it's just weird. But yeah, so we have 3 lines like in the image there. It currently reads, "I lust to caress your body." And then down below is a tourbillon. So we have weird adolescent humor and then hot horology at the bottom. It's kind of like a mullet of a watch. Business on the bottom and party on the top. Yeah. It's a Richard Mille, so I personally don't care for its aesthetics at all. The next watch is another Patek Philippe. This is a Patek Philippe Celestial 6104, and I like this watch. This is really cool because it's like looking up at the starry sky in the center of the dial there. Around the edge, we have a pointer date. So we have a date hand that goes, another beeper. So we have a date hand that goes around the edge of the dial and points at the dates that are there. This is in gold. I don't care for the diamonds that have been encrusted around the bezel on this. If this were like white gold and there weren't diamonds on it, this would be my favorite watch so far. I love that dial. And the circle that's on there that shows compass directions, that's pretty cool too. All right, so the next hip hopper on my list is J. Cole. And I don't think I've heard any of his stuff. He looks kind of chill, almost old school. I don't see any tattoos or any craziness at all. He just looks like a guy. Looks like he would be a fairly nice guy. All right, so the first watch that I have listed for him is an AP Royal Oak Chronograph in yellow gold. This is the reference 26320BA. And this is fairly subdued. It's just a gold AP Royal Oak with a light colored dial. It has square indices for the hours, and it's fairly clean. The dial isn't overly busy. It's chronograph busy, right? There's not anything extraneous on there. I do like the colorway on this. I'm not a huge yellow gold fan, but I think this one looks good because it has that light colored dial and some of the gold hues in the sub dials and the dark seconds hand and dark chronograph hands I think look really good on it. And again, it's just kind of like a normal Royal Oak, so that's kind of cool. The next one is a Rolex Yachtmaster 40, reference 11665. And this is a rose gold Yachtmaster with a dark bezel on it. And the hands and indices have some rose gold accents on them as well. I like the dark bezel on this watch. I think it looks good with the colorway. I'm not a rose gold fan, but I think Rolex did a pretty good job by integrating some of the darkness in this, and it kind of makes the rose gold look better than it would have otherwise. And it's on a rubber strap, which kind of makes it less loud, less garish, and more palatable, in my opinion. It looks a little bit more chill, not so in your face as it would be if it had a bracelet on it. I think it looks good on that rubber strap for a rose gold Rolex. Next up, we have a Patek Philippe annual calendar chronograph, reference 5905. And this is a great looking dressy watch. Again, it's subdued. So far, I kind of like this guy's tastes. These watches are stupid wealthy watches and definitely show off level watches, but they're not in your face. Like if they're on someone's wrist, if you didn't know what it was, it would just look like a dress watch. It wouldn't look like anything like luxuriously expensive. It would just look like a really, really nice dress watch. And this piece is yellow gold, and it has a dark brown dial on there. It looks great. I kind of like the way they did the annual calendar in the 3 windows going around the top of the dial like that. It's unique. And then the seconds hand down below looks great with all the numbers in there. It's not just indices. We have the seconds called out there. There's Dauphine hands on this watch. And the pushers, which I believe are for setting the date and whatnot, look like chronograph pushers, and they're fairly subdued also. They're kind of square shaped. It's a nice looking watch, and it's on a dark leather strap. Very surprisingly classy. Next up, we have a Rolex Day Date 40, reference 228235 chocolate dial. And this has Roman numerals on there, which is interesting looking. It has the fluted bezel. It looks to be kind of a rose gold color. It's a little bit difficult to tell from the images. And then it has a chocolatey colored dial on there. It's okay. I do like the hands on it. It has Oyster Perpetual style stick hands, which is great. It's kind of cool that they went with a departure from their Mercedes hands on this piece. And the Roman numerals make it look kind of fancy. Not a huge fan of it overall though, but yeah. And a couple other watches that were listed in the article that I'm not going to show pictures of because they're just fairly well-known Rolex references. And one of them is the Rolex Day Date 40, reference 228235 with a rose gold and custom diamonds on the case. Next, we have a Rolex Day Date 40 President, reference 228238, and that is in yellow gold. Next up, we have 21 Savage, and once again, I've heard his name, but I don't recall any songs that he's done. But this dude has watches. I mean, they just kept going and going. I think I spent 2 nights putting this list together, and most of that was grabbing images, image after image, and a lot of them were his. And what I like about his collection is the variety. I think his collection is probably the most fun of the collections we're looking at tonight, just because they're so different. He has a bunch that are similar, so we know what he likes, but he also has some pieces that are just super fun. So let's dig into what we have for 21 Savage. And I found these images on Bowtied Life. I should mention, let's see, for J. Cole, I found the images on Men's Maxing. Interesting site. And yeah, Time and Tide for the previous watches. All right, so the first watch on my list for 21 Savage is a Patek Philippe Aquanaut Chronograph 5968G. And this has a blue dial that kind of fades to black around the edges. And it has a blue rubber strap on it. It's sort of Nautilus looking, but the case is different. So the case doesn't really have the hinge things on the side there. It's got pushers on it. The subdial at the 6 o'clock is the chronograph subdial. And I believe the center seconds is also the chronograph hand on there. And it's a pretty good looking watch. Again, I kind of like Patek Philippe, so I kind of like the Nautilus. And this watch is a little bit more tame than a Nautilus, which is kind of cool. It's just a great looking sporty piece. I'm imagining that the case size is probably around 40. I'm not sure. It looks pretty good on his wrist though. A pretty decent watch. And then we go to a totally different extreme with the next watch. This is a Rolex Daytona Eye of the Tiger, reference 116588 TBR. And this is a fully blinged out Rolex piece in yellow gold. There are diamonds all over the dial, all over the bezel. And there's the pattern on the dial, I think, is where the tiger comes into play. It almost has hints of tiger stripes. I don't see a tiger face in there in looking at this picture. Maybe there is somewhere in there and I'm just not seeing it. But I can see the tiger reference in looking at this dial. It is on a rubber strap, which is kind of cool, because it sort of subdues the crazy blinginess of the watch head itself. So I feel like as a blinged out watch goes, mainly because of that strap, this one's not horrible. The subdials on there are kind of interesting. They have sort of a sunburst to them and they're in a darker gold color. Very interesting piece. I don't think I've ever seen a Rolex that looks quite like that. Next, we have a Richard Mille RM61-01 Johann Blake, and this is a black and silver piece. Most of it is black. We have some silver in the skeletonized dial there where you see the movement through it, and the pushers above and below the crown are also in silver. It's a Richard Mille, but I do like the touches of silver in there. I feel like a mostly black piece with a bit of silver here and there is kind of a cool colorway. It's almost, I don't know, almost robotic or kind of tech looking, but the pushers on this watch I think look okay, just because they're that pop of silver amid the black crown and black dial on there. But yeah, it's just an RM. Next up we have an AP Royal Oak Rainbow, reference 15413 RBC. And this piece has a completely blinged out dial on it. And the bezel is blinged out with rainbow colored stones. The dial itself doesn't look too bad. It's blinged out, but the stones are so consistent, so close and small, that it almost looks more like a textured dial than a blinged out piece. Although that's in photographs. I imagine that when you see it in person, it's quite obviously more blingy. Like as light bounces off of those, it wouldn't look like a texture. But in the photograph I'm looking at, the one that I'm displaying, it looks like a texture. The rainbow is just a bright, kind of fun thing. Yeah, so sort of a crazy, eccentric watch there. He has another RM, the 11-03 McLaren. I didn't bother grabbing a picture of that. We've already seen a bunch of Richard Milles. Next up, we have a Patek Philippe Aquanaut 5167R-001. And this one has a great looking brown colored dial on it. It's a lot like the one that we looked at before that was in blue, but this one's a brown reference. And it has a brown rubber strap on it. It's a rose gold color. And even though I'm not a fan of rose gold, I think this colorway looks really good because that rose gold works with the brown dial and the brown strap. And it would be a great piece to wear with greens or mustard colors, both of which I love. So a mustard colored button up or something, this watch would look amazing with. Probably better with green though. I think the brown with the green. Tree colors. Oh, we're getting back to nature with this watch. I think that would look pretty good. All in all, it's a sports piece, it's a Royal Oak, or it's an Aquanaut, sorry. So, but I do like that brown. It's kind of cool. And it looks good on him. It fits with the outfit that he's wearing. It's interesting seeing like that sort of almost subdued dressy-ish sporty watch with a bright tie-dyed like hoodie. Very interesting contrast there. Next up we have a Patek Philippe Aquanaut 5167A-001 in black. And this is my favorite of the Aquanauts. I absolutely love this colorway. The case is silver, the dial is black, it's on a black rubber strap. And the indices are nicely contrast. The hands, I believe, are silver, but in this photograph they look white. The second's hand is white. I love the silver and the black and white contrast on this watch. This is great. If this was a 36mm watch or something like that, and I had tons and tons of money, stupid money, this would be a fun piece to have in the collection. Minus that date wheel, because I'm weird like that. But it is, in this case, the light colored date on a black dial kind of works because it's kind of camouflaged in with those white colored indices. And that's kind of cool. But so far, yeah, this piece is probably my favorite yet in his collection. All right, before we go on to the next watch, at the time of this recording, it's still the holiday season, so I am having a little bit of bourbon cream. This stuff is delicious. It is from a distillery that's local. It's kind of like milkshake meets eggnog with a kick to it. So, cheers. All right, so the next watch is a Patek Philippe Nautilus Chronograph 5980/1A. And this is a blue dial, Nautilus. The dial fades to black around the edges, which looks great. It looks like deep water when brands do that, and that's fitting for a Nautilus. It has chronograph pushers on the top and the bottom of the hinge. That's a crown guard for the crown. And at the 6 o'clock, there's a sub chronograph wheel there, dial there, and it has the center chronograph on it. And I like Nautiluses, and I kind of like the blue colorway on here. It has a white gold case on there, or silver case, and the blue looks really great with that silver. I'm surprised that they go with date windows like this on something of the caliber of a Nautilus. I'm not sure why they don't have a black background date with white text. It looks so jarring on this dial. This is a perfect example of why I'm not a huge fan of date windows, because it looks like someone forgot to add the date. They did the whole design, and at the last minute, we're like, we forgot the date. Cut a square in it, call it good. just not a huge fan of that. It doesn't even look like part of the design. It looks like an afterthought. And date windows are useful for some people, so that's totally cool that it has it. Great. But yeah, I would much rather see a clean dial. I'd much rather see a batten marker at that 3 o'clock to match all the others. Have some perfect symmetry to this dial. But yeah, I will never own a Nautilus, so it's all good. The next watch is a Rolex Sky Dweller, reference 326934. This is another blue dial watch. It has an interesting pop of red above the crown at the 12 o'clock. This one has a white gold case and the fluted bezel. I'm not sure, I think all of these have fluted bezels. I could be wrong. I'm not a huge aficionado of Rolex references, but the Sky Dweller is always intriguing to me because of that wheel that is sort of offset toward the 6 o'clock. And I believe that, yeah, that's a 24-hour dial on there. That wheel has always intrigued me on these watches. And I do like the hands on it. The hands are very technical looking. They're not Mercedes hands. They're great detailed stick hands, I guess. But yeah, the Sky Dweller's an intriguing reference to me. I can't really say that I like it, but it's unique and it always catches my attention. So I don't hate it. And that blue color is great. It's kind of a steel blue. Yeah, not terrible. We also have a Rolex Day-Date 40, reference 228238 that I don't have a picture of. I grabbed a picture of this next one though, because this is a Rolex Datejust 41, reference 126300, and this has a bright primary red dial on it. And that is pretty crazy. The case is white gold. It has stick hands, so kind of Oyster Perpetual style hands. It has the Cyclops, and it has fat Roman numerals on it, which are really interesting because they're so thick that it kind of accentuates the fact that lower numbers are a lot narrower and smaller than when you get up towards 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. It's very interesting. It looks asymmetrical because of this, and it's also interesting because where the Cyclops is there, the red inside it almost looks pink because of the distortion. And once again, it's so weird when luxury brands do white background date windows. Just like the previous, the Nautilus that we looked at, this has a red dial and a bright white date window in there. It's very glaring and bizarre. I feel like a color that complements that red would be good, or a matching red, or a dark color. Something. Yeah, just something other than that white. It just doesn't, it kind of stands out too much. It's very strange. But the watch looks amazing in that outfit, with that outfit that he's wearing, because the outfit is crazy and fun as well and has lots of red in it, along with the red car behind him. Perfect piece for that particular photo. And I don't know if that's a clip from a video. If so, excellent choice of watch for that particular video with the aesthetics that he went with in that video. All right, now we're going to venture out into a brand we haven't encountered yet on this list. We have a Piaget Polo S chronograph, reference GOA 42005. And the colorway on this watch is pretty cool because it has a gray colored dial with a silver case, and it almost looks like the bezel's kind of gray, but I think it's the photograph. I think that it's actually silver like the rest of the dial, but that slate gray of the dial itself and different hue of gray in the sub dials looks pretty cool. And I don't mind the date wheel on this watch, even though it has a white background and it's a date wheel. I like that it's at the 6 o'clock, and I like the way that they went with almost a perspective shape on it. So it's smaller at the top than it is on the bottom, and it almost looks like it's coming out at you at an angle. So I don't mind that actually in this piece. I feel like this is a decent looking watch. It's not too loud. The colorway looks great. Again, I like those grays a lot. And I feel like those chronograph dials, the sub dials there, are kind of oversized, which is fun. I'm not sure what it is about oversized stuff on watches, but I kind of like it. Like big dates on watches, I'm actually a fan of. They just look intriguing. And some of the watches where they have power reserves, I think Nomos has one like that. It's either a power reserve or a big oversized sub-seconds that it has on there. Maybe it's not Nomos. Maybe I'm thinking of Young Hands or one of the other Bauhaus brands. But where the sub-dial takes up like 3/4 of the dial. Those are always fun to me. I'm not sure why. But this piece isn't bad at all, in my opinion. And lastly, we have a Richard Mille RM016. And I included pictures of this one because it's very interesting. This one is actually a square watch. It doesn't have the usual RM to no shape to it. And it has a black case with red minutes track around the edge of it, white dot indices in that track, and it's on a red rubber strap. And I feel like the black and red colorway looks great on this watch for an RM. And that square shape. I like that square shape. I feel like there needs to be more Richard Milles with cases like this that aren't that weird to know that they do on absolutely everything. Like, change it up a little bit. This still has the DNA of Richard Mille. You can see it from a mile away and know exactly what it is, but it's something different. So I included it in here. I kind of like the square shape. It's an improvement over other RM watches, but it's still an RM. The text for the hour indices is kind of interesting on this piece. They're oversized and square as well. So I don't mind the skeletonization on this, mainly because they did that with the hour indices. They made them part of the design. They look like they fit with the square shape of the case, and I think they add intrigue more than noise. So not terrible. And it looks pretty good on him. The pop of red is great. Yeah, not terrible. Next up, we have an artist who's actually deceased, and that's Juice WRLD, WRLD. I've not heard of him or his music. Apparently, a medical examiner ruled that he had died after an accidental overdose of powerful painkillers. The rapper, whose real name is Jared A. Higgins, died in December 2019 at the age of 21 after having a seizure. A little bit of a dark turn to this list, and we have one watch for him, and it came from a site called Almost On Time. And this particular piece is an Audemars Piguet Royal Oak Offshore, the Volcano. And this watch is interesting because of its orangey reddish color on the dial and the strap. In the blurry photograph, or the smaller photograph that we're looking at, it almost has kind of a G-Shock look to it. So when I first saw this picture, I actually thought it was a G-Shock and was thinking I'm definitely going to include this because we haven't seen any G-Shocks yet. I think a while ago I saw something on a hip-hop star who had blinged out a G-Shock, if I remember correctly. So they blinged out a plastic, I think it was even. No. I'm going to have to go back. That would be crazy, blinging out a plastic watch. But that might have been exactly what I saw. It's been a while. I'm going to look that up because that would be an interesting piece to dig into a little bit further. But that's the one piece that I have for him. Next up, we have Pop Smoke. Never heard of this guy. Sadly, he is also deceased. And in this one, it's actually watch related. So someone had broken into his house and was robbing him. He confronted the guy and ended up getting shot. The guy was trying to steal a Rolex from him. And I found one piece that he had owned. This was on a site called superwatchman.com. And the watch that was in his collection was a skeleton Santos de Cartier. So we have another brand that makes a debut in this list. And it is a brand that I appreciate. It's a brand that typically does classy, dressy pieces. And even their over-the-top pieces are pretty much full-on dress watches as well. Alright, so this watch is a Santos. So it has the DNA of a classy dress watch, but it has been completely blinged out. And the skeletonization on this watch is almost like a window watch because of all the openings. It's like just looking right through it. So if I'm wearing it, all you see is pastiness with diamonds interrupting it. It's interesting to me to see a blinged out Cartier. I haven't really seen that. And the skeletonization is also something I haven't seen. But this particular piece is pretty popular because our next rock star, rapper, hip-hopper is Lil Uzi Vert. Which reminds me, a while ago I decided that if I was going to become a hip-hop star, I think my name would be Lil Bit. Yeah. Alright, so this came from Bowtied Life, and Lil Uzi Vert's collection consists of a Cartier Santos skeleton, which we just looked at, a Richard Mille RM030, a Richard Mille RM020, an AP Baguette Diamond Royal Oak skeleton, a Patek Philippe Nautilus 598/1R. So we're seeing patterns of definitely popular watches amongst these guys. Patek Philippe Annual Calendar Chronograph, reference 5961P. Rolex Datejust 41, reference 126333. A Rolex Submariner Date. A Rolex Day Date 40, reference 228239. A Rolex Day Date 36, reference 18238, 18 karat gold rose gold. A Rolex Sky Dweller, reference 326934, and a Rolex Datejust Pearl Master, 86348SAJOR. And last up, we have Lil Baby. I feel like Lil Bit is cooler. Yeah, a little bit. Alright, and this came from GQ, and here we have instances where he's not only rocking one luxury watch that's a show-off piece, he's wearing two, one on each wrist. A Royal Oak on one, a Rolex Datejust 2 on the other, and two Richard Milles. And what's interesting is surrounding this guy is some interesting news where he got scammed by a jeweler. Very interesting how they're doing this. This is not something that I was aware of. It's a little bit different than where places will sell you fake jewelry or fake watches. So what they'll do is hip-hop stars who have come into all of their money, maybe they don't know much about watches, they just know the brands, the big name brands that they want, the show-off brands. So they buy one of these watches, and then they want to get it blinged out. So they go into a jeweler, and here's what happens. This comes from Hype Beast, where they had an article on this. And I don't recall who wrote Fake Watch Busta on Instagram and followed him because his account sounds very interesting. At first he had lots of jewelers and rappers and other people angry at him for exposing scams in this area, but as his account has gained in popularity, it's kind of subsided now. But this is a quote that I ended up encountering. "Let me expose the custom jewelry industry. You're a rapper, you somehow get your hands on an authentic Swiss timepiece near retail, somehow. You take it to a custom jeweler to bust it down for you with diamonds, and what they do is they take a less than $1,000 hyper clone of your watch. They bust that down and resell your authentic watch for tons of money, charge you money for that hyper clone with diamonds on it, and you don't know watches or materials or movement like that, and you're flexing a fake watch on your video. That's how their profit margins are so fat. So they get these super expensive luxury watches, swap them out for clones that are cheap, they sell that watch for tons of money, they sell you your crusted out fake, and they get double profits from that one exchange. Very crazy. That will do it for my huge list of crazy watches that are in the watch boxes of rappers who are popular today and I should probably check out. I didn't have time to go through and listen to their music at all because I was too busy grabbing so many photos and digging up articles on the watches that they own, trying to track down articles where they actually show pictures of the artists wearing them. So many articles are like, this guy owns this watch and that watch, and they're just showing generic pictures of the watches on white backgrounds or something. I wanted to actually see the watches on the artist's wrist and not just take someone's word that they own it. So it was an interesting deep dive. So many pieces, a couple brilliant ones in there, but yeah, thanks for watching.